Hi everyone, this is just a quick video to review what we went over in class about HTML. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. It's a standard markup language for creating web pages, and it describes the structure of a web page. HTML consists of a series of elements that make up the content of the page. We have elements for things like headings, paragraphs, links, images, and so on. So what do we need to have on an HTML page? So this is our basic skeleton of an HTML. I'm going to go over it in our text editor. So I'm opening up my text editor. Once I have my text editor open, the first thing I want to do is I want to save it as an HTML document. If you don't already have a place to save your HTML documents on your desktop, I would just make a folder by right-clicking and saying New Folder, and then name it something like Code or something that you'll remember. And this is where you can store all of your HTML documents that we're working on in class. Okay, so I made a folder right here called Code, and that's where I'm going to save this. Okay, so right here, I'm just going to do File, Save File As, and we'll call this my first HTML. .html. Okay, and you should have the format either as all files or an HTML document. Okay, and I'm going to save it in that folder I just created on desktop. All right, so now it's saved as an HTML document. We'll make this a little bit bigger. Okay, so for the skeleton of our web page, the first thing we need is the doc type. Okay, so this goes in all capitals, and our doc type is HTML. All right, this just tells the browser that we're working on an HTML document. All right, next we need our HTML element, and in here we're going to tell the browser that the language we're working in is English. So we'll put EN in quotes. All right, so HTML, here's my opening tag for our HTML element, and here's my closing tag. I'm just going to hit enter between them because the HTML is going to hold all of the other elements on my page. The next element I'm going to add is the head. And so anything that goes in the head doesn't actually show up on our page, but a lot of times it might be some data that the page needs to run. For now, we're just going to put our title in here. All right, so the title right now is going to be my first web page. Okay, this title won't actually show up on the page, but it will show up in the tab when I search. So if I save this right now, save file, I'm going to right click and copy the file path, and then I'm going to open it in the browser. So I'll just paste this here, and we can search, and you can see this is where my title shows up. Okay, so my first web page, my first web page. Another place the title is going to show up is if you do a Google search. So if I search how to make ice cream, okay, if you look here, the other place it's going to show up is all of these right here. These are our titles for the document. So if I click into this, how to make vanilla ice cream, you can see it's showing up in the tab too. Okay, so it's important to name your title something that your page is actually about because you want it to show up in Google searches. Okay, so it's good for search engine optimization. Meaning when people search things, it might come up if you have matching keywords. Okay, next we're going to have our body element. All right, the body element contains all of the things that are actually going to show on our page. So this is the content that will actually be displayed. So before we actually add any HTML elements to our body element, let's just quickly review what an element actually is. Okay, they have an opening tag and a closing tag. Okay, the closing tag you can see has a / at the start. Okay, they're going to have the same name in both of these, and the content goes in the middle. Okay, so here we have an H1 opening, my first heading, this is the actual heading, the content, and then we have the H1 closing with the / to indicate that it's a closing tag. Okay, so this is an H1 header element. This here is a paragraph element. It's indicated by the P tag. So P opening, P closing, my first paragraph, the content that's in the middle. Something else to keep in mind, and we've already seen this on our document, but elements can be nested, right? So you can see the title element is nested inside of the head element here. Okay, and that's why it's indented a little bit because this is a child element of the head. That's the parent element. So we indent it to show that this belongs to the head element. Okay, all of our elements in the body will be slightly indented from the body to show they're children of the body element. Okay. So looking in here, I'm just going to add a couple elements. First, I'll make an H1 header. Okay, there are 6 different size headers. H1 is the biggest size. H6 is the smallest size. Okay, there's H1, H2, H3, all the way down to H6. Okay, so an H1 header is going to look like this. This is my first H6 header. This is a small header. Let's just save this and see what it looks like. Bring our actual page back up. You can see we've got an H1 header here, the biggest one, and an H6 header here. This is a small header. Okay, and it is pretty small. All right, we're also going to add in, take away that element, I'm going to add an H2 element. And here I'm going to say my favorite foods. And under the H2 element, just going to write a paragraph about my favorite foods. I'm making a paragraph element. I'm not actually going to write a paragraph. I'm going to say my favorite foods are spaghetti, ice cream, and sushi. All right, so now we've got an H1 element, and I'm going to actually change this to say my favorites. So this is going to be about my favorite things, and I want to change the title to be that about that too. Okay, my favorite things, so that the title tells what the page is actually about. All right, so I'm going to save this. We'll see what it looks like. Okay, nice. So now I've got my H1 header, got an H2 header, so this is like a subheader. H1 is going to be the most important thing of what the page is actually about. You only need one H1 element on a page. Okay, H2 is a next size down, so that's my subheader here about my favorite foods. And I'm going to make one more section. Say H2, my favorite celebrity. Let me just capitalize this title too. My favorite celebrity. I'm going to say my favorite celebrity is Bill Murray because he is hilarious. All right, so now I've got 2 H2 headers. Oh, I didn't want to do that. Just want to save it so we can run it and we can see what it looks like. So every time you want to see what it looks like, you have to save it first and then you can refresh it. All right, so now we can see I've got my favorite celebrities, or my favorite foods, my favorite celebrity, and some information about both of them. Okay, now I'm actually going to change this up a little. Okay, as we said before, HTML is about the structure of a web page, right? So we can see here, this is our structure, right? We've got the HTML element holding everything, the head element that holds the data for our page, and then the body that holds all the actual content on our page, okay? We can actually add more structure to our page by adding semantic elements. Okay, so what is a semantic element? Well, semantic means to give something meaning. So by adding a semantic element, we're really just giving our HTML document more meaning. Okay, some elements that can give it more meaning are header, nav, section, and footer. Okay, so they tell what part of the page this is. You can kind of think of it like an essay, right? If you turn in an essay, you have a header at the top of the essay that usually tells what the paper is about, might have your name, the class, right? Inside, the essay is made up of different sections, right? So we're going to break it up into sections. A website works the same way. Okay, one section is a navigation bar, right? So we usually put that in a nav element. Okay, this is useful if another coder is looking at your page. They know what's going on in each section. It makes a lot of sense and it's easy to read. Okay, so let's add a couple semantic elements to our page. All right, so right here at the top, I'm going to wrap my H1 element inside of a header element. Okay, so I'm going to put my opening tag before it, the closing tag after it, and then I'm just going to indent the H1 element so I know this is a child of the header element. Okay, so the header element is not to be confused with the head element. Okay, head just holds that data that's not going to be on the page. Header lets us know, like, this is the top of my page. Okay, this is kind of like the starter information. Okay, here I have a section about my favorite foods and with the H2 and the paragraph, and another section about my favorite celebrity. Okay, so I'm going to wrap both of these in separate section elements. All right, so the opening tag goes at the start, closing tag goes at the end, and I'm just going to indent both of these because these are both children of this section. All right, and I'm going to do the same thing down here. Right, so this gets wrapped in the section element. And now I've already given my page just a little bit more meaning. So if someone looks at this, they know this is the header. Here's one section and here's another. Okay, another semantic element you'll sometimes see is main. Right, so if I add the main element, I'm going to wrap all of the main content in this, other than the header, right? Because the header goes in the head. This is like the main section. Okay, so I'm just added a couple semantic elements. All right, so what's interesting about this, when I save this, look what's going to happen. If I go to look at it in the browser, okay, watch this. Ready? Make it a little bigger. Refresh. Nothing changed. Okay, it all looks exactly the same. Okay, but now if a coder goes to look at my code, they can see it just makes a little bit more sense. It also makes a little more sense to me. Like, say if I leave my code for a long time and I come back, I can see very clearly this is the top of my page. It's my header. I have two separate sections. Okay, another way to make your code a little more clear is by adding comments. Okay, so a comment looks kind of like this. It starts with an opening bracket, an exclamation point, two hyphens, and then in after that, this is where the comment's going to go, and then it gets closed by two more hyphens and a closing angle bracket. So right in the middle of my hyphens, so two hyphens in, one, two, in the middle, this is where I write my actual comment. Okay, so this comment, I'll say this is the head of the page. It holds information about the page, but doesn't actually show. Okay, and then I can make another comment down here above the body, and I'll say the body is the information that actually shows on the page. Okay, so if I save this, right, and I refresh again, comments also don't show up on the page. Okay, they're just for you to let you know some information about the code. They're good to remind yourself if you want to add something or let you know what's going on. Okay. Couple other elements we can look at. I'm going to change this paragraph element and I'm going to make it an unordered list. Okay, so I'm going to make this a list of my favorite foods instead of a paragraph. Right, so that uses a UL tag for unordered list. And inside of the unordered list, I'm going to nest three list item elements. So LI stands for list item. I'll say spaghetti, sushi, and ice cream. All right, so now I have an unordered list. All right, and if I go refresh, I can see this is going to change a little. All right, it's a list with bullet points. Okay, there's another type of list called an ordered list. Okay, so unordered list is UL for unordered. Ordered list is OL for ordered. Okay, if I change it to ordered list, it's going to have numbers next to it because it's telling me the order it goes in. Okay, so now I have 1, 2, and 3. And if I switch it back to UL, okay, the numbers are going to go away and it's just going to go back to bullets. So just look closely here. These numbers are just going to change right back. And so that's the difference between an ordered list and an unordered list. One other important element we can add is an image tag. Okay, so right here, I'm going to add an image tag of Bill Murray. Okay, so an image tag, an image element is a little different from other elements. Okay, two elements we went over in class were the BR element, right? This stood for line break. Okay, so BR means we're going to have a line break because if you put a bunch of spaces in your code, so here's my first section, here's my second section. If I make a bunch of spaces, this doesn't actually affect the document. If I save this and I refresh over here, no extra spaces get added. Okay, if I want to add spaces, I have to use the BR element, which stands for line break. Okay, and I can put as many as I want. Okay, but what's interesting about line break is there's only an opening tag, no closing tag. Right? This is because we don't have any content that has to go in the middle. Line break just is like hitting enter on your keyboard. So now I can see there's going to be some extra space here. Oh, I forgot to save it. So remember, you've got to save it or it won't refresh. Okay. And the other one we looked at that just has an opening element was the horizontal rule. Okay, so HR stands for horizontal rule. Okay, or a horizontal line is what it really shows up as. Okay, so now we can see we've got that. An image element is similar to these in that it only has an opening element, or I'm sorry, an opening tag. Okay, so there's no closing tag for the image element. So right here, I'm going to take these away, and I'm going to add an image element in this section. So it starts with IMG. Inside, I have SRC equals. This stands for source. So it's going to be the source of my image. Okay, and in quotes, I'm going to paste the URL for my image. Okay, so right here, I'm just going to go grab an image of Bill Murray. Okay, so if I open this, I'll click on this, and I'll right click, and I'm going to say copy image address. And if I come back over here, I'm just going to paste this in the middle of the quotes for my source. Okay, so there's the source for my image. And then after this, I have to put ALT. ALT stands for alt. So this is alternate text. That means in case my image doesn't show up, this alternate text will show up instead. So I want it to be describing what the picture is about so that if my image isn't working for some reason, like maybe the user has slow internet connection, so the image won't load for them, or maybe I had a bad URL I pasted in and it didn't lead to an actual picture, then they're going to see what the words that would come here next to like a broken picture of an image. All right, so I'm going to say picture of young Bill Murray. Right, and then I'm going to put the closing bracket for my image tag. So it says IMG is here, it opens. You can see the final closing bracket goes right here. We don't actually have a closing tag though, like we do with our other elements. It's just one element, and inside of it we have the source attribute. Okay, so these are different attributes of our element. The source attribute tells us what the actual source is for the image, and the alt attribute, which is alternate text in case the image doesn't work. Okay, this is also important in case somebody has a visual impairment, meaning they can't see. So they might not be able to actually read or see the pictures on your page, and they have something called a screen reader that reads it out loud for them. Okay, so the screen reader is going to read whatever this alt text says. So you want them to be able to understand what they should see in the picture if they were able to. Okay, so it's really important that the alt text is what the picture should actually be of. So I'm going to save this. We're going to run it. And let's see what happens. All right, so we have a picture of Bill Murray. It's huge, though. Okay, so we can add one more attribute to this. We're going to add a width attribute. All right, so right here, we've got source, we've got alt, and before that closing bracket, I'm just going to change width. And I'm going to say width equals, say, 300 pixels. Okay, and pixels is just a unit of measurement. Okay, it's 1/96th of an inch is a pixel. All right, so if I refresh this now it's a little bit more of a normal size. Okay, and the picture is working. I'm going to show you what would happen if the picture wasn't working. I'm just going to take away a couple things at the end of my URL. So now it should be a broken URL, and it's not going to work the right way. And if I refresh, oh, look what happens. We can see here, I'm going to make this a little bigger. Okay, it's got a broken picture symbol, and it's got my alt text, picture of young Bill Murray. All right, so now even though the user can't see the picture, they know what they should be seeing a picture of. Okay, and this is what a screen reader would read to someone who actually cannot see the picture, or even if it is working. So again, important that that's actually about what the picture should be. Okay, and then the last thing I'm going to show you is how we can add some bold and italics to our text. Okay, so there's two ways we can add bold. Okay, we can wrap it in strong tags. Okay, so if I wrap Bill Murray in the strong element, it's going to bold his name. Okay, so right here, I'm going to do that. Let's look at what happens to Bill Murray's name. It's bold now. Okay, another way I could do this, I could change strong to just be B. Right, so I've got a closing B or opening B element, closing B element, and this is another way to make something bold. So B and strong both make it bold. Okay, the difference between those two looks exactly the same, but if you just use B, that just means make it bold to look bold. When you use strong, it means it's actually important. Okay, so we'll say strong because we can say his name is important. Okay, we're gonna use italics around the word spaghetti. Okay, because spaghetti is my ultimate favorite food. So right here around this list element, I'm just gonna put I tags for italics, italicized. So this is gonna italicize spaghetti. Okay, so now we can see it's italicized. Another way we can italicize is using EM. Okay, so EM stands for emphasize, but it does the same thing as the I tag. Okay, it just makes spaghetti italicized. Okay, it didn't actually change, but we know it changed over here. All right, so similar to strong, EM means emphasize, so it actually means it's important. When you just use I, it just means make it italic to look that way, right? But when I put EM, I know it's italic and it's important. Okay, so I'm going to leave it as EM because since it's my ultimate favorite food, I feel that it's important. So I'll leave that italicized. All right, and I'll add the 2 zeros back to fix this image. And that covers what we went over for HTML. All right. The next video, we'll go over some of the styling. Okay, so we'll add CSS in our next video.